When Don't Look Up released in late 2021, it was instantly polarizing. Now, some people saw it as a heavy-handed satire of climate change denial, while others recognized it as a painfully accurate reflection of how modern society reacts to crises, whether it's climate change, COVID-19, or global instability. Fast forward to today, and the film's message has only become more relevant. The DART mission successfully changed an asteroid's orbit, proving planetary defense is possible. The role of billionaires in global politics has increased dramatically, especially with Elon Musk's influence in the White House and on social media. And scientific misinformation fueled by AI-powered disinformation campaigns has become an even bigger threat. So let's break down the science behind Don't Look Up and how our current reality has managed to make it even more terrifyingly real.
This is not real. This is not real. This is not real. This isn't happening. Kate, tell me this isn't really happening.
PhD candidate Kate DiBiase, rocking fingerless gloves and an outright rejection of butter on toast, is doing a Sky survey while vibing to rap, because obviously that's how all great scientific discoveries happen. And then, boom, she finds a comet, which is awesome because you get to name it. But then it's instantly terrible because it's a planet killer heading straight for Earth. Now, her advisor, Professor Randall Mindy, does the math, checks it twice, freaks out a little bit, okay, freaks out a lot, and then he calls NASA's Planetary Defense Team, where they confirm, we're all completely screwed. So off they go to the White House, expecting immediate action. Instead, they get President Janie Orlean, who is basically Trump in a wig, but, you know, with better PR training, and her chief of staff / son, Jason. Now, fun side note here, Jonah Hill described that character as, what if Fire Festival was a person? And it is so apt today for the existence of Elon Musk in the White House. He is the physical embodiment of Fire Festival, if there ever was one. So we've essentially got Trump and Musk in the White House. What's their plan?
At this exact moment, I say we sit tight and assess.
Sit tight and assess?
Sit tight.
And then assess. The sit tight part comes first, then you gotta digest it. That's the assessment period.
Meanwhile, Mindy somehow becomes an AILF, am I right? Kate spirals into existential rage, and the world turns an extinction-level event into a dumb political argument. When some juicy presidential scandal tanks Orlean's midterm numbers, suddenly she's all ears for the scientists. Cue the Armageddon-style Let's Save the Planet plan featuring Peter Isherwell, a tech billionaire who's basically just a what if Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, and Mark Zuckerberg merged into one deeply unsettling entity. We've got Bash, the corporate overlord of everything, and we have an asteroid mining plan that absolutely should have been shut down in the brainstorming phase. Welcome to the I Don't Give a Shit show, starring Janie and the Incompetents. Mindy, Kate, and Dr. Oglethorpe do everything humanly possible to make people take this seriously. But by the time they finally look up, it's too late. So, where do you want to be when the world ends? Now, what did people think about this? Because I instantly loved this movie. Now, some critics called it too obvious as a climate change metaphor, but that's the entire point. Now, there was a quote that I found from a climate scientist named Peter Kalmus, and he put it best, I think. He said, "It's funny and terrifying because it conveys a cold truth that scientists and others who understand the full depth of the climate emergency are living every day." And that's exactly why this movie works, because it puts on screen what scientists have been screaming about for decades.
There's a 100% chance that we're all going to die!
Now, if you've seen Don't Look Up, you've probably come across a million fact-checking articles about the movie's science, and it's no surprise. They had a serious expert behind it, Professor Amy Mainzer. Now, Amy Mainzer is a professor of planetary science at the University of Arizona, and she is the principal investigator of NASA's NEOWISE mission, which, for those who aren't fluent in NASA acronyms, stands for Near Earth Object Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer. Translation? She literally hunts asteroids for a living. She was brought onto the film to make sure, first, that the astronomy was accurate, second, the way scientists talk and react was believable, and thirdly, the science communication struggles were shown realistically. And all of that shows up in the movie, starting with the discovery of the comet. So Professor Mindy and his team are researching supernovas at the Subaru Observatory in Hawaii when PhD candidate Kate DiBiase spots something unusual in her data. Turns out, it's a comet. A comet that is absolutely on track to hit Earth in 6 months and 14 days. Now, is this plausible? Yes. Now, comets are the fast and unpredictable chaos missiles. They are made of rock, ice, and frozen gases, and they come from the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud, which is like way out beyond Neptune. They tend to travel at 2 to 3 times the speed of asteroids. So like Halley's Comet or Halley's Comet, however you want to pronounce it, moves at 55 kilometers per second. And they can range from 30 kilometers per second to 70 kilometers per second, depending on their trajectory. Now, we've only tracked about 30 to 40% of them because they don't develop their tails until they're closer to the sun, meaning we often don't see them until it's way too late or until they're like a lot closer. So, how screwed are we in terms of the movie? Well, let's do some horrifying math. Jupiter is about 881 million kilometers away. Now, a comet moving at 55 kilometers per second would take about 6 months to reach Earth after detection. And that's exactly the timeline in the movie. It isn't just plausible, it's actually alarmingly realistic. But how does that make you feel? Guys, I have a lot of guilt about having written this script and then all that asteroid news came out. I'm really sorry. I hope people aren't freaking out. But let's stick with the movie. Let's come to the scientists. So real people, real frustrations. In an interview, Amy Mainzer was asked what she hoped people would take away from the movie, and her answer was that scientists are humans. The process of science is a human process. Now, we may have communication challenges, but we are trying and we are going to keep trying. So let's talk about the humans. We have Dr. Randall Mindy. He studies trace gases around dead stars, so it's not super relevant for comet tracking, but like, okay. He hasn't published in a while, so the media doesn't care about him, and he needs serious media training. We then have PhD candidate Kate DiBiase. She is an astrophysics grad student, and Jennifer Lawrence absolutely nails the PhD student energy in this movie, I swear to God. The best part, her relationship with Mindy feels real. That mix of academic respect, camaraderie, and shared existential dread. And honestly, Kate's snack conspiracy obsession is too real, because when everything is spiraling out of control, sometimes you just need to fixate on one specific thing to stay sane. I swear to God, this is something that we do. Now, we also have Dr. Teddy Oglethorpe. He is the head of Planetary Defense Coordination Office. The middle ground between the scientists and the government is basically what his role is. Now, he realizes early on that the White House is not taking this seriously, and he is less surprised than the others because he's been through this before. Unlike Mindy and Kate, Oglethorpe knows exactly how these conversations go. Now, he does have hope, but it is fading fast because we enter into a world filled with fake news, science denial, and the don't look up mindset.
They think they're better than you.
Don't look up! Don't look up! Because I'm above you of your freedoms. Don't look up! Don't look up!
The era of fake news and conspiracies. Because we live in a world where all knowledge is at your fingertips, yet somehow we're worse at understanding what's real and what's nonsense. Now, Don't Look Up perfectly captures that exact crisis, where people reject real data because it doesn't fit their worldview. They distrust experts but blindly believe influencers. They care more about both sides' debates than factual reality. The movie isn't just saying people don't believe science, it's saying people actively choose their own facts no matter how absurd. And that's why this movie hits so hard. Now, the film's central metaphor, literally refusing to look up at the comet, is climate change denial in a nutshell. It doesn't matter how many graphs, reports, and warnings scientists put out until people physically see the effects themselves, it is not real to them. And even when the crisis is undeniable, there are still people who double down. But for me, this movie goes beyond climate change. You have COVID misinformation, you have flat earthers, you have the entire debate both sides mindset on vaccines, people who think the Large Hadron Collider is summoning demons. It's not just science denial, it's science rejection, and it's everywhere. And honestly, sometimes when you watch the world, you just want to scream. And I cannot tell you how much I mean that more now than I have ever before. 2025 so far is literally like watching this movie again.
I think this whole administration has completely lost their fucking mind!
Now, in Don't Look Up, Dr. Oglethorpe is the head of Planetary Defense Coordination Office, which sounds like something made up for a movie, but it is a very real department at NASA. At least it was when I started making this video. I don't know if it is anymore. Now, according to their official site, their job is to detect and track hazardous near-Earth objects, NEOs, aka space rocks, that could ruin our entire week. I assume this department still exists considering the asteroid that we're currently keeping observations on, but honestly, with that administration in the US, I don't know what you guys be up to. Now, another role that they have is to characterize the orbits of these objects and the impact risks. Now, they research ways to deflect or destroy incoming threats, and they coordinate with the US government on planetary defense strategies. It's not just theoretical, because NASA is, or again, at least they were, actively working on ways to stop potential impact events. One of their biggest projects is the Near-Earth Object, NEO Surveyor spacecraft, which is launching in 2026. Its mission is to scan the skies for potentially dangerous asteroids and comets so that we're not caught off guard. Now, because, as Amy Mainzer, the film's science consultant, points out, we don't actually know if there's a killer object heading our way right now, but the probability is non-zero. So while we still have time, we should probably figure out how to deflect or destroy whatever space decides to throw at us. And we are. DART, the real-life version of Let's Blow It Up, NASA's double asteroid redirection test, was our first actual attempt at planetary defense, which is a fancy way of saying we slammed a spacecraft into an asteroid to see if we could knock it off course. The target was a harmless asteroid called Didymos that had a little moonlet orbiting it. DART smashed into this 160-meter wide space rock so scientists could analyze how the impact altered its velocity. Because if we ever do need to deflect something dangerous, we need proof that this method works. Now, would this save us from a 9-kilometer wide planet killer like the one in Don't Look Up? Absolutely not. But it's a start. The real problem, we would need years, possibly decades of lead time to build and launch a deflection mission like this. Right now, it would take at least 3 to 4 years to build a spacecraft capable of stopping an impact. So if a comet suddenly appeared 6 months away from Earth like in the movie, we'd have exactly 2 options. Number 1, prepare for impact. Number 2, panic. But don't worry, there's billionaires around.
Everything is fine.
So this brings me to billionaires and space and my deeply conflicting feelings about whether it's innovation or an ego trip. Peter Sherwell, the tech billionaire hybrid, he's a Jobs/Musk/Zuckerberg cocktail with all the weird detachment and God complex that comes with it. Bash is every tech monopoly rolled into one. And his asteroid mining obsession is not that far from reality. Now, in theory, mining asteroids and comets makes a lot of sense, because asteroids contain rare metals like gold, platinum, and iridium, and comets contain water ice, which means rocket fuel in space, which is a major factor in long-term space travel. But who's really going to own space resources? Now, a great depiction of this is in the TV show The Expanse. Because it's one thing to talk about using asteroids for resources, but it's another when the people controlling the technology are also controlling governments, media, and public discourse. It's not a wild concept to think that a real-life bash corporation would prioritize profit over safety. And that's exactly what happens in Don't Look Up. We get that fantastic scene in the White House where Isherwell unveils his highly experimental, highly untested asteroid mining plan. Now, in terms of science, Isherwell's plan, quantum fission explosives are not a thing. The whole steer the fragments into the ocean idea is just blind optimism disguised as a strategy, and shocker, the bash plan fails spectacularly. And that's what happens when you have science versus corporate bullshit. One of my favourite lines in the entire movie comes during Mindy's final interview on the Daily Rip. He tries to bring up the peer review process, and Jack, who's Tyler Perry's character, says, "If bash stock is anything to go by, we don't need to worry about the peer review." And that line is the whole problem in one sentence. Because we live in a world where stock prices and public opinion matter more than the actual scientific method. And Don't Look Up doesn't just call that out. It puts it on a big flaming comet and hurls it at the Earth. Corporate science and the death of dissent. We see this in real life all the time. The suppression of scientists who challenge corporate interests, the firing of experts who speak out against misinformation, the erosion of public trust when corporate-funded studies contradict actual peer-reviewed research. And my pet peeve, hacks. Scientists who should know better but choose to feed the frenzy instead. Because the internet is a weird and terrifying place sometimes. Bad actors are given bigger platforms than actual experts. Misinformation is more profitable than truth, and the people who actually try to hold the line, they get pushed out. This is why the peer review process matters. But when power and profit outweigh accuracy and integrity, you get a world where bash determines what truth is. And that brings us to one of the movie's biggest gut punches, the complete rejection of science in favor of emotional narratives. We're faced with the language of science versus the language of clickbait. Dr. Mindy tries so hard to explain things in a way that's scientifically precise. Gauss's method of orbital determination, astrometric uncertainty of 0.4 arcseconds, and people's reaction? Crickets. But the moment he says it has the power of 1 billion Hiroshima bombs, mile-high tidal waves, and earthquakes, suddenly people pay attention. And that's the tragedy of science communication. The truth is complicated. It has math, it has uncertainty, it has probabilities. But fear, emotion, rage, that spreads like wildfire. And that's why the keep it simple, no math line in Don't Look Up hurts so much, because it's painfully real. So to me, Don't Look Up doesn't pull its punches. It spends 2 hours screaming into the void about science denial, misinformation, corporate greed, and government incompetence. And then it just lets the world burn. There's no last-minute nuclear strike that miraculously saves the world. There's no rogue scientist pulling off an impossible fix at the 11th hour. There's no hopeful sequel bait where humanity rebuilds from the wreckage. Because in real life, if we don't act in time, there is no do-over. Hollywood loves disaster movies where like a single genius or a small team of underdogs figures out a way to science their way out of like total annihilation. But those stories, as fun as they are, they can sometimes make us feel like someone else will fix it. That even when things are catastrophically bad, the right minds will pull off a last-minute save. Don't Look Up makes it painfully clear that that's not how reality works. The scariest part? The real world is now screaming, "Look up," louder than the movie ever did. We have the time, we have the science, we have the warnings. If we don't act, If we keep getting distracted, if we let greed and misinformation keep winning, then one day we're going to run out of time. The only question is, are we finally going to look up?
Where you want? Is anyone else seeing this? That's it. That's it. That's the comet. Look, it's right there.
So let me know what you think. Did you enjoy this movie? How do you feel about it? Do you agree with my thoughts or my feelings? Do you disagree? How do you feel about the climate of science and discussing science or just the media in general? At the moment, it's all a bit crazy right now. So yeah, just let me know what your thoughts are. If you enjoy what I'm doing, then please do subscribe to the channel and, you know, engage with the video, like comment and like and stuff like that, just so you can help me out to continue making these videos. So yeah, thanks. And I'm going to sign off now. Stay nerdy. Bye.
Well, the handsome astronomer can come back anytime, but the yelling lady, not so
Not so much.